The message that supposedly came from the spirit of Yu Menglong shattered all boundaries between the world of the living and the shadow of hidden power, revealing crimes that no one dared to name. It emerged with a disturbing serenity, written with a firmness that seemed incompatible with the fragility of human life. It was as if his words had crossed a threshold that belongs neither to time nor memory. Those who read the text claim to feel a presence, a kind of gaze watching them from a place where lies find no refuge. You spoke of beings of light who record every human action without the possibility of bribery or erasure. The most striking phrase in his message stated that those who destroy lives without conscience would be judged by the heavens. That verdict, spoken from a voice no longer inhabiting this world, ignited an emotional fire in thousands of people. It was not a lament, it was not a plea. It was a solemn reminder that there is a higher order that transcends the arrogance of those who believe human power is absolute. But beneath glamour and excuses, what mechanisms truly drive this crisis? We will analyze every detail, from the initial mistakes to the irreversible damage, to see how the entertainment world operates and how an icon is redefined. The text mentioned between 13 and 14 individuals involved in his death. They were not ordinary figures. According to the description, all of them belonged to the most privileged circles, people who considered themselves heirs to a modern monarchical lineage. You claim their blood was cold and their hearts were empty. That image shook the public, especially when some spiritual analysts began linking the concept of that imperial lineage to the most powerful political elite in China. The impact grew even deeper when internet users highlighted a comment that went viral immediately. If a spirit dares to speak, why do we, the living, remain silent? The question struck a sensitive chord. There was something eerily coherent in Yu's words, something that pierced through skepticism and awakened the sense that the darkness he pointed to was not imaginary. The story took an even more unsettling turn when the message referenced a clandestine group known as the Emperor's Circle. The existence of that organization had long been considered an unfounded rumor. But Yu's words, filled with symbolic precision and emotional resonance, led the public to contemplate a far more sinister reality. That spiritual warning ceased to be a simple account and became a direct threat against those who believed they could control the narrative from the shadows. Without anyone anticipating it, Yu Menglong's declaration became an echo that began shaking the most rigid structures of power. Each sentence was dissected, reinterpreted, and amplified by thousands who no longer accepted the official version of events. The message did not simply reveal the possibility of a crime. It exposed an entire system built upon secrets that seemed impossible to illuminate. As social networks ignited with theories and questions, a growing certainty formed in the collective consciousness. If a spirit had broken its silence, then something was about to change forever. The origin of the spiritual messages attributed to Yu Menglong became the first major mystery of this story. The content, far from being incoherent or emotionally uncontrolled, displayed a deep and almost inhuman calm. That serenity was interpreted as a sign of authenticity by many followers of Eastern spirituality. According to them, a spirit at peace can transmit warnings with a clarity that a living mind, overwhelmed by daily pressures, could never achieve. That calmness became the starting point for an analysis that quickly transcended the personal and evolved into a veiled denunciation of an impenetrable system. The figure of the Emperor's Circle emerged as the dark core of the messages. It was not the first time the existence of such a group was mentioned, but never before had its name been linked to a supposedly spiritual testimony. According to the message, its members considered themselves heirs to ancient imperial authority, a modern elite who believed they possessed a natural right to extend their lives, even if that meant sacrificing the lives of others. The idea resonated deeply among those who already suspected that power structures in China might harbor hidden practices that would never appear in official records. Spiritual analysts consulted by various online communities interpreted this reference to imperial lineage as a direct critique of the country's most influential political committee. It was not about concrete accusations, but rather symbolism pointing toward a moral imbalance rooted in the highest spheres. The message suggested that such figures had forgotten the boundary between the human and the divine, acting as if their position placed them beyond any earthly judgment. That interpretation reinforced the notion that the message did not stem from resentment, but rather from a moral warning from a different plane. Tension intensified when testimonies began to appear from other countries that seemingly aligned with the message's narrative. In Taiwan, a medium named Liming claimed that during an electronic voice phenomenon session, he captured 2 whispers mentioning the same names found in Yu's message. He affirmed that the tone of those voices conveyed a mix of sadness and urgency, as if someone was desperately trying to reveal a hidden truth. Although some skeptics dismissed it as mere coincidence, the timing of the event sparked renewed interest in the authenticity of the messages. In London, a clairvoyant known as Ty Williams reported experiencing unsettling visions after focusing on the case. He described a glass palace struck by lightning, luxury cars burning amid a dark fog, and a sky filled with flocks of crows flying over Beijing. To him, those images symbolized a negative energy foreshadowing the collapse of a dominion built on systematic abuses. Although the scientific community attempted to discredit these claims as illusions caused by suggestion, the similarities between the visions and public fears were too powerful to ignore. The growing accumulation of signals, testimonies, and messages led many to ask a crucial question. Was it possible that a spirit was trying to intervene to warn about a moral imbalance that earthly institutions refused to acknowledge? The idea may seem irrational in a world ruled by logic, but for those who felt that Yu's words echoed an uncomfortable truth, it no longer seemed far-fetched. Sometimes when reality appears unbreakable, any crack can become a channel through which long-hidden truths emerge. The public began forming a disturbing image of the alleged members of the Emperor's Circle. According to the message, they competed in acts of cruelty, as if each demonstration of power was a step towards symbolic immortality that only they understood. That behavior, described with such calmness in the message, caused a profound psychological impact. The most repeated question across forums and social networks was how someone could describe such monstrosity in such a serene tone. That serenity, far from reassuring, intensified the horror. It was the calmness of a witness who no longer fears any earthly consequence. The contradiction between official silence and the intensity of spiritual testimonies helped the story gain momentum. Some scientists attempted to explain the phenomenon using rational theories, but the more they denied its possibility, the more accounts emerged from different parts of the world. That expansion of voices and coincidences created the impression that something was unfolding beyond the reach of human logic. It was no longer mere superstition. It was a pattern. Analysis of the origins of the message revealed a crucial point. Regardless of whether Yu Menglong spoke from a spiritual plane or someone had channeled his memory, its content displayed an unsettling coherence. The narrative structure, symbolic precision, and serene tone seemed crafted to penetrate any emotional barrier and force the audience to confront an uncomfortable truth. Although no one could conclusively prove its authenticity, the collective sentiment was that the words could not have been the product of a mere fabricated rumor. As debate intensified, society became trapped between 2 opposing forces. On one side, the desire to protect stability and preserve reason. On the other, the intuition that there were too many unsettling coincidences to dismiss everything as fantasy. In that middle ground, the story found the perfect stage to expand, planting the seed of an unease whose true magnitude had yet to be revealed. The media impact following the circulation of messages attributed to Yu Menglong reached unprecedented levels. Within days, countless posts began flooding social networks, each reinforcing the suspicion that something dark was happening behind the scenes of entertainment and politics in China. The combination of official silence and growing public unrest created a tense atmosphere that spread quickly across the country. In the midst of this charged environment, rumors began taking the form of tangible events, as if the spiritual message had triggered a chain reaction that was difficult to stop. One of the most unsettling incidents occurred when an amateur video recorded in the early hours showed dozens of workers hastily dismantling an art installation in Beijing's famous 798 district. The scene was illuminated by cold lights, and shadows revealed uniformed figures supervising the process with stern demeanor. Tractors and trucks transported boxes covered in black cloth, while workers moved metal pieces and structure fragments that seemed to have been removed too quickly. Hours later, the video disappeared along with the entire account of the user who uploaded it. The public interpreted this as a desperate attempt to erase evidence related to Yu Menglong's case, especially since multiple witnesses claimed that this location may have housed documents or physical proof tied to covert experiments. The situation grew even more alarming when 5 factories in the city of Zhaozhuang in Shandong province caught fire the same night. The fires were so intense that footage showed columns of dark smoke rising into the sky as if trying to hide the truth beneath a curtain of ashes. According to business records, these industrial sites were linked to companies connected to the professional circles of Yu Menglong and other young actors. The fact that the fires occurred within such a short period raised immediate suspicion. However, no official media covered the event. The phrase Zhaozhuang fire became a banned term in Chinese search engines. Even so, the more authorities tried to silence the issue, the more witnesses surfaced on various platforms. One of them, a technician who worked at one of the affected factories, stated that days before the fire, he saw military vehicles transporting biological cooling equipment. That detail ignited the most chilling theories about the nature of the experiments possibly involved. Public pressure increased significantly when a group of independent researchers from Hong Kong published a detailed report based on data extracted from the computer of a suspect named Sun Yan. These files included a list of 600 names accompanied by disturbing annotations. 37 of those names were marked in red ink with the note processed, accident, or pending. Yu Menglong's name was crossed out with a large crimson X. The public was left in shock. It seemed to confirm that his death was not an isolated incident, but part of a carefully constructed pattern. The emergence of the list triggered a wave of fear and distrust. Among the highlighted names was that of popular young artist Yi Qianxi. His upcoming concert, announced months earlier, suddenly took on a completely different meaning. During his performance, the stage was covered with symbolic visuals that immediately raised alarms. Solitary eyes, red circles, and spirals reminiscent of ancient rituals were projected behind him as he danced. For the most observant viewers, the staging appeared to be a desperate message hidden within the visual language of the show. Many began to believe that Yi was trying to warn his followers of the threat looming over him. As tension grew, so did contradictory testimonies. Some scientists argued that everything could be explained by collective psychological phenomena or exaggerated interpretations. However, their explanations were not enough to stem the avalanche of reports appearing daily. From different parts of the world emerged voices that seemed to connect to the narrative initiated by Yu Menglong's spiritual message. The story crossed political and cultural boundaries, becoming a global mystery that challenged both logic and the control of those determined to maintain silence. The two sides, those who believed and those who doubted, began clashing with unusual intensity. On one extreme were those who saw in all these events proof that dark forces had been operating in the shadows of power for a long time. On the other were those who defended a rational perspective and argued that conspiracy theories were dangerous. Yet even the most skeptical admitted that there were too many disturbing coincidences. The issue was no longer about explaining a single event. It was about understanding a pattern that seemed to be expanding uncontrollably. The situation reached maximum intensity when international media began covering the story. What had initially been a rumor in forums and social networks turned into a viral phenomenon. The case of Yu Menglong, far from fading away, became the perfect storm, exposing cracks in the system. Authorities attempted to contain the chaos, but the narrative had already slipped from their grasp. The public, driven by fear, curiosity, and outrage, demanded answers that no one seemed willing to provide. Thus, the media crisis not only highlighted a deep conflict between power and truth, but also revealed the fragility of a system that, despite its apparent rigidity, could tremble before a single message from beyond. The darkest point of this entire story emerged with the revelation of the case of Chu Feng, a young monk from the Shaolin Temple who died under mysterious circumstances. Unlike other names on the list, Chu Feng was not a public figure, nor someone with political or economic influence. He was simply a young man devoted to spiritual life, a 21-year-old who had found refuge from the noise of the world through meditation and monastic discipline. His seemingly peaceful and pure life ended abruptly and inexplicably. During the live broadcast of his birthday, Chu Feng appeared lighting a candle with a forced smile. Toward the end of the video, his eyes filled with tears, and he uttered a phrase that would resonate long after his death. "My temple is not what you believe." That confession became his final testimony. He was found unconscious in his room days later and died a week after that, with the official diagnosis stating sudden heart failure. But the truth began revealing other layers when an elder monk discovered partially erased surveillance footage. In it, two men dressed in black entered the young monk's room carrying a metal briefcase. The footage cut off soon after, leaving viewers to imagine what happened in that missing interval. Shock deepened when a Taoist intermediary from Guilin, specialized in spiritual communication rituals, claimed to have received a chilling message from Chu Feng's spirit. "My body was used to save those who refused to die." That short but devastating phrase spread across social networks like an echo, revealing a horrifying truth. Many people began to believe that certain organs of the monk had been removed and used in an emergency procedure to save an influential figure in the entertainment industry. Outrage grew among spiritual practitioners in China, who viewed tampering with the body of a consecrated monk without consent as a profound ethical and spiritual violation. The tears of Chu Feng's fellow monks during nightly prayers became a symbol of resistance, while the internet flooded with messages under the hashtag Pray for Chu Feng. The idea of involuntary sacrifice added an additional layer to the chaos. The public understood that the case of Yu Menglong was not an isolated incident. It was the tip of an iceberg that had remained hidden beneath a power structure operating without moral boundaries. As outrage intensified, international attention shifted toward a crucial political event. The meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump at the Gimhae Air Base in South Korea became a symbolic moment interpreted by many as a sign of imminent collapse. In footage captured by the media, the two leaders were seen walking together beneath the American flag and China's red flag. The difference between them was striking. Trump walked with confidence, upright, with the energy of someone who commands the scene. Xi Jinping, on the other hand, seemed inward, with his gaze lowered and a pale face. His expression conveyed a mix of fatigue, confusion, and silent sorrow that contrasted with the firmness of the American leader. When Trump tapped his shoulder in a friendly gesture, Xi appeared startled, as if pulled from a reality he no longer controlled. The video quickly went viral. On social networks, thousands of people began comparing the leaders' postures. One appeared firm, the other looked defeated. However, what truly impacted the public was the emotional contrast radiating from Xi Jinping. His demeanor evoked the sense that something deep within him had broken. Some observers described him as a leader who had lost the mandate of heaven, a traditional Chinese concept symbolizing the moral and spiritual legitimacy to govern. What was most concerning was that official Chinese media only showed 3 seconds of the video, cutting the moments where Xi appeared shaken and distracted. Even more revealing was the fact that while Trump spoke without reading, Xi relied on 2 large sheets of paper for his responses. For many, That image represented the decline of an authority once considered unbreakable. The silence, the lost gaze, and the lack of firmness reinforced the idea that the power he once held no longer entirely belonged to him. Speculation increased when documents were leaked revealing the concessions China had agreed to after that meeting. The country agreed to postpone rare earth export restrictions for 1 year, purchase 25 million tons of American soybeans annually for 3 years, and reduce tariffs on agricultural products from the United States. In exchange, Washington only lowered tariffs by 10% and delayed restrictions on the export of high-tech chips. For many experts, these agreements represented a significant diplomatic defeat for China. What was most surprising was that the issue of Taiwan was not mentioned during the press conference, despite being one of the most sensitive matters in Chinese policy. International analysts interpreted this omission as a sign of weakness. Some media outlets even described the meeting as a power reversal, an unexpected shift placing Xi in a vulnerable position. For Chinese citizens, this episode was not seen as a mere diplomatic encounter. It was a wound to national pride, a public demonstration that the control Xi had projected for years was beginning to fade. For those closely following Yu Menglong's case, these developments seemed like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Divine justice, some said, can manifest in various forms, and sometimes it presents itself as the downfall of those who once stood above everyone else. In that context, the idea of an invisible force moving behind the scenes began to seem less improbable. Spiritual messages, political signals, and public outrage intertwined into a narrative suggesting that no power is eternal and no crime goes unanswered. The symbolic fall of Xi Jinping became the climax of a story where the spiritual and the earthly appeared to converge at a decisive moment, marking the beginning of the end for those who had forgotten the limits of humanity and compassion. The story that began with a spiritual message ended up revealing a complex network of injustices that had remained hidden for years behind the doors of power. From Yu Menglong's warning to the tragic death of Chu Feng, and through the international exposure of Xi Jinping's hesitant behavior, each event seemed part of a pattern that could not be attributed to chance. It was as if an invisible force had decided to lift the veil covering the truth, exposing the fragile foundations of a system built upon silence. Through these revelations, the public came to understand that justice does not always take the form of courts or official declarations. Sometimes it appears in the moral downfall of those who believe themselves untouchable. Other times it emerges in the voice of those no longer physically present, but whose memory holds the power to shake the foundations of entire institutions. Justice, as Yu's message implied, does not die. It simply waits for the right moment to emerge with clarity. The case of Chu Feng provided one of the most painful lessons. His innocence, his devotion to spiritual life, and his tragic end proved that even spaces considered sacred can be corrupted when power becomes a religion unto itself. His final phrase, "My temple is not what you believe," became etched in the collective memory as a reminder that darkness can infiltrate even the brightest places. Yet it also showed that truth, although suppressed, always finds a way to surface. The public reacted with solidarity and renewed conviction that each life, even though seemingly insignificant to the powerful, holds intrinsic value that cannot be manipulated or sacrificed. The wave of support for the victims and the voices demanding transparency demonstrated that society was unwilling to remain passive in the face of abuse. The spirit of resistance began to grow among people who refused to accept a narrative imposed by those who had forgotten their humanity. The meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump also left an indelible impression on public opinion. The image of a leader who seemed to have lost his emotional center became a symbol of the fragility of human power. That scene not only showed political decline, but also the beginning of a deeper transformation process. Humility, ethics, and empathy emerged as essential components of true leadership, and their absence revealed a structure that could no longer sustain itself. Throughout these events, one fundamental truth was reinforced. The strength of collective consciousness is capable of challenging even the most powerful institutions. The courage of those who spoke out, the determination of those seeking answers, and the spiritual energy that seemed to emerge from different parts of the world formed an unexpected alliance that put an untouchable system in check. The story concludes with a phrase that Yu Menglong transmitted from eternal silence. Justice never dies. It only waits for the moment to rise. The voice of an actor who was silenced became a beacon for those who still believe that truth possesses a light of its own, a light that no shadow can extinguish forever. His legacy, combined with the sacrifice of figures like Chu Feng and the revelation of political fragility long ignored, suggests that humanity always retains a spark capable of piercing the darkness. In a world where the boundaries between reality and symbolism sometimes blur, Yu Menglong's story reminds us that every act, every word, and every hidden truth carries a weight that eventually finds its echo. If any lesson endures from this story, it is the certainty that justice, though silent, moves steadily toward whatever must be brought into the light. And for those still seeking answers, one question lingers in the air. Are we willing to listen when the truth finally decides to speak? If this story has made you reflect, I invite you to stay with us. On this channel, we analyze every shadow, every revelation, and every truth the industry tries to hide. Subscribe, activate the notification bell, and join us in the next investigation, where we will continue uncovering secrets that never reach the public eye. Your voice, your opinion, and your presence are essential to ensure these stories do not fade into silence. Leave us a comment with your thoughts and share this video with those who seek to understand what truly happens behind the brightness. Every gesture helps the truth continue moving forward.